Welcome to the Bizness Edge, an innovative podcast focused on decoding entrepreneurs and industry leaders. Discover the roots, struggles, successes, failures, and hustle required by modern-day entrepreneurs. Buckle up, Edge Nation. It's about to get real.
Welcome to the Bizness Edge with Mike G. I am Mike G. And in studio today, we have a very special guest. He is a life coach, and he has a unique look at coaching people in life, especially around the area of fear and freedom and release. And I got to tell you, I was in a session with him recently, and it was just brilliant. Kenny, welcome to the Bizness Edge.
Yeah, appreciate you having me.
It's great to have you here. Now, you have been a life coach for quite some time, and your website is coachingtoclarity.org.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. And I've checked it out, and you've got a ton of videos on YouTube.
Starting to get that going, yeah. People don't like to read anymore.
It seems like it,
yeah,
right?
They want to just push a button and have it come to them.
I think that's why I need to buy stock in Audible.
Yeah.
Because I love to read books, but I'd rather listen to them. You're right. Yeah. Coach, welcome. So, Kenny, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, what are your roots? Where do you come from?
Grew up in Denver originally. Born and raised there, and then for periods of my life, depending on what I was doing, I'd always go away. But Denver was always home up until a couple of years ago.
Yeah. What was it like at home when you were a kid?
It was tough. My parents were 16 and 18 when they were married, and 4 kids by 21 and 23. Goodness. So, wow. I mean, here I am 50 years old, and I'm looking at, if I had one kid now, I'd be a struggle, Right. Life's just tough. So imagine that. 4 kids, and my mom's 21 years old. Yeah. That's a lot to expect. So there was quite a bit of chaos growing up.
What kind of chaos was there?
Well, all of us were athletes. There were just three boys, 1 girl. All of us were athletes. My dad had, he's an engineer, and so he's starting out in his business and all that. But you got to realize he was also going through college through most of that. So there's financial pressure. There's the pressure of a relationship. When my mom would tell this great story, she said, when they got married, they were in the back of the church in the pews taking bets on how long it would last. So that, I mean, just looking at their dynamic, that's a lot of stress. So you throw 4 kids in it, going to school, starting his engineering, not his company, but working, getting that going. And then trying to raise kids when you're kids yourselves.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah. So it ended up, at some point, my mom turned to drinking. My dad would freely admit that he struggled with, his personality, was constantly trying to do his best. But, I mean, we all struggle with that, right? Yeah. So it was, it was tough on all of us, but a blessing for all of us is how I see it.
That's interesting because a lot of the people that I get to spend time with, especially entrepreneurs and people that are involved in business, many times they don't have happy childhoods growing up, and yet, here's this dynamic, incredible human being sitting across the table from me that has accomplished so much in life, and yet their beginnings, their roots were really a struggle. Yeah. And I think it forces. I think I would love to write a book about that, although I'm not going to write one because people don't read it anymore.
You can talk about it.
But the thing is that it's almost like those people that had the hardest childhoods growing up are able to cope with many different things that that maybe some of the kids that had it pretty easy struggle with. And I don't know the different. I don't know which way the scales tip, right, as far as success goes and levels of success, because there are some people that just had awesome childhoods growing up, and were taught all the skills that they needed. Their parents were very involved in their lives and and supporting them and having them grow. And one of the books that I read, Outliers, is a great book, Malcolm Gladwell, and he talked about kids that were raised in that kind of environment did very, very well, and then the other kids that were not, they did well, but they didn't have the same kind of skills. They actually had to learn it on their own, but they were still tenacious. Yeah. So anyway, that being said, I can relate to your growing up.
Yeah. Well, I had at one point, I started seeing a counselor because, with the childhood I had, I was constantly trying to find an answer, what's going on.
Sure.
I remember coming into my counselor. I'm like, when am I ever going to fix it? When will it be over? And he's like, Kenny, you got to realize something. Those people, like you said, who grew up with this perfect life, they don't have the resources you have.
Right.
When the what hits the fan, you have a skill set that they'll never have. They freeze.
Yeah.
They don't know, like you just said. Their life may be more peaceful in general. They have coping skills that keep their lives much more consistent and level, whereas mine might go more like this.
Yeah.
But when their life hits a roadblock, they don't know what to do. Whereas someone who's been through something like I do, will come up with thousands of different, ideas. And so you're right. Generally, people that end up doing stuff like I do, we've gone through something difficult. It's a gift. It's not a curse. It's a blessing too of, the situation I was born into. I'm very lucky.
Well, and that truly is, I think that truly is the commentary today, and that should be the way that we look at it.
Yeah.
Like your attitude really has everything to do with your level of success in life. It has everything to do with how you approach problems and whether or not you're asking the kind of questions. Now, there's something I heard you say recently even about questions, and we want to get into that really, really, really deeply a little bit later. But what fascinates me is what are some of the takeaways that you got from growing up in a home where it wasn't perfect, where you had an alcoholic mom and you had a dad that was struggling to, get his kingdom built, right? And doing the best he could. What were your takeaways?
Let's see. Takeaways, I think from my dad, watching him, perseverance. Even though he struggled with stuff, he worked his tail off. And even on himself, over time, the self-reflection, now he would admit, he still misses stuff, but he recognizes. So many people get in denial and put the wall up.
Yeah.
So, the takeaway from my dad was you just never give up, ever. Never. Because it didn't matter what happened, and financial problem, whatever it was, my dad found a solution.
Yeah.
And so I know I can look through things in my lifetimes, like when I was playing hockey and I'm sleeping in parks with my suitcases and equipment and hitchhiking town to town, and I didn't think anything of it because I guess, I grew up with a father who would have done the same thing.
Yeah.
From my mom, love. Took away love.
Yeah.
She just had a heart for people. And that's, the gifts that I have are an even mix of both of them is really what it comes down to.
That's such a great acknowledgement. Let your parents know. Right.
Yeah.
I had an interesting experience where I actually got to go back and look at all the things that my mom had done for me.
Yeah.
And I encourage people to go back to their parents and actually say, look, I turned out okay.
Yeah.
And you had a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, that's great, man. And as a teenager, what interested you?
Well, if I look at it, for me, my life changed. I was somewhere 10 or 12 years old, and I woke up in the middle of the night and found my mom passed out. That's when I found out she was an alcoholic, and I literally heard a click inside my head.
Wow.
And I physically, emotionally, everything changed in that moment. And I know there was a piece of me that much younger was different. I'm not real connected to it, but I think it was, as I'm where I am now, I'm thinking it was much more artistic. But as a kid, all I ever did, everything was athletics. I remember shortly after the finding my mom that I can still picture myself in my bedroom, and I created this fantasy where I went, if I go play pro hockey, if I play pro golf, if I marry this type of woman and become a broadcaster, then this feeling will go away.
Right.
And I'll feel good about myself, and of course you'll think I'm great. And so
and that's important.
Yeah, that became my pursuit.
Right.
And so what was I interested in? That. And how can I avoid the fear that I felt in that moment? It was really, I created a coping skill to deal with the fear that I experienced. I didn't know what to do with it. And as I found, nobody does.
Yeah. And so when you talk about the fear, so what showed up for you in, how do I ask that question? We might have to edit this
How
part.
did I act it out?
Yeah, how did that show up? Like, what did you do? You know?
Well, it started off with the athletics, realizing a high there. Here's part of how it acted out. I chose 2 sports, hockey and golf, where it's solitary.
Ah, yeah. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah,
right,
because now I'm safe, right?
Yeah, it's not quite a team sport.
No, I chose things that aren't team sports,
right.
Because of my fear of intimacy, of getting close to people, because look what happened with my mom.
Yeah.
Fear is 2 things. It's either a fear of rejection or a fear of inadequacy, and it doesn't have to be true. And so finding my mom, was I inadequate or rejected? No. But as a young kid, you project that she doesn't love me, and of course I'm inadequate. I can't stop her. So that fear manifested itself in several ways. I picked solitary pursuits. For the next 6 to 7 years, I was in and out of hospitals, as I realized later, I made myself sick and hurt. Because if I was sick or hurt, she would stay sober.
Really?
Yeah, and I'd get attention from my dad. I went from being completely powerless to I owned that house. I completely manipulated it.
Wow.
And by being sick or hurt. And so that's what a lot of people do with fear is they turn it inwards upon themselves because it's too big. You don't know what to do, especially when you're young.
Yeah.
So I discovered that one day after my phantom back went out and screaming and yelling at my mom because my crutches were in the rafters and I couldn't get to them. And I'm laying on the garage floor and you selfish, you won't stay sober long enough to take care of me. And that was the one and only time she was drunk when I was sick or hurt. And as soon as the words came out of my mouth, I froze. I mean, I literally froze. I went, oh my God, I've been making myself sick or hurt for years to try and control her. And that was the last time I got sick or hurt.
Really?
Yeah. Within a year and a half, she quit drinking.
Wow.
That's kind of what happens when you victimize yourself like that and then you stop. You give the other people permission to stop too. So...
Well, this leads into my next question is, how you got started in coaching and you're a unique coach, period. I mean,
Sure.
I've worked with several people and life coaches, and I got to tell you something, you got something.
Thank you.
And so really this leads into like how you got started coaching and why. And I don't want to leave out the fact that, you played professional sports and you did some.
Those were coping mechanisms.
Cut it out.
They really were.
We'll talk about it real quick though, but where did you play? Like, where did you play at?
I played hockey and golf and like I said, both were coping mechanisms.
Sure.
Hockey, part of my fear, I set myself up. Every time I just about to succeed, I'd sabotage it. Like I went to camp. I finished. This is a great story. I finished the year, and I'm flying back on the plane. And I say to myself as I'm looking out the window, I'm like, "This is the year. You're gonna make it. Whatever you do, don't get messed up with a woman." 3 weeks later, I was engaged.
Oh my God! Yeah.
3 weeks later, 4 months later, I go to camp. I've hardly done anything. Trained because I'm chasing her. I go to camp, and the coach says I'm better than. I was a goalie, better than the 2 guys there. One ended up playing 14 years in the NHL. The other one played parts of 6 years. He tells me I'm better than both of them, and what do? I quit.
Yeah.
Because she didn't want me to play, and so I blamed it on her. It gave me an out.
Oh
You
yeah,
see what I mean?
sure.
So
that's one of the things that we do to sabotage. We tend to. I know this for myself.
Sure.
I'll talk to myself. I tend to take those things that I know I'm good at and find like this ethereal reason to not actually do it.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I look back on it and I go, oh my God, I just sabotaged myself.
Yeah.
This could have went really well. Anyway.
The truth is I never wanted to play. I created that fantasy because there was a piece of me that went, if I do these things, I'll have a closer relationship with my dad. Now, did my dad put that on me? No, I put that on myself.
Right.
And so as I look back now, what I always wanted to do is this. I knew I was just born different. I walk in a room and I feel things, whether that's, I know I've taken personality assessments. I'm a ENFP, which is incredibly rare. It's like off the charts in empathy. There's only 5% of the whole world population is that personality type.
Right.
And I know as a kid, I just knew things that people didn't. Now that side of me got shut down after I found my mom and I went to chase this.
Yeah.
But in the background, you asked how I got to coaching.
Yeah.
In the background, even as I'm pursuing all these false pursuits, all I ever did was read about psychology, personal growth. I mean, I was basically out destroying myself, kind of making my life a case study as I learned.
Yeah.
And, you know, so then I hit a moment in my life where I was suicidal, and everything came clear, and I realized, wait a minute. I had found a journal entry from 30 some years ago where I talked about having this voice of, I know what I need to do, but I'm afraid of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what I found with all of us. Mm-hmm. There's a fear to succeed, because like when you walk into fear like I did as a kid, it's failure, and you just repeat it. It becomes so overwhelming. So to change that and become a success, you have to face that fear. And I didn't want to do it. But at that point I had no choice.
Yeah.
And so basically, how did I become a coach? I was born one. And then I chose a life to teach me about it, so that, and then in the background, I was learning how to overcome it. So when I hit that dark moment, I had all the tools to get myself out. So now I can sit across from anybody and literally, sometimes just walking in the room, I have instances where I will know exactly what they went through as a kid. I don't need to hear them. I just look at them. Other times I may ask them a sentence, hi, how are you? And just the way certain words they choose, body language, whatever, I'll know. Other people, maybe 3 quiet. But generally within 5 minutes, I will know exactly what they're afraid of, where it came from, and exactly how it's sabotaging their life. And I know nothing about them. And then it's a question. The art form came, okay, each person is different, how they'll want to work through this.
Right.
So some, it's give it to them. Others, let them walk into it. You know, that's the art form. And that took me cleaning up my side of the street. And now I'm in that place. And so now that just comes naturally, whereas it was a fight.
Yeah. I love the fact that it's like a natural for you. So it's a natural.
Yeah.
But obviously you've done tons of study.
Yeah.
I mean, what are some of your credentials? Where did you study? How did you learn? Who do you?
Well, I'm a certified life coach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as far as schooling, I left college, or I was getting a degree in communications, and I left to play hockey. I'd say a lot of my study came under a guy named Mike Pinkston, brilliant man who opened my eyes to a lot of stuff. I mean, I was going through a divorce, and I decided, you know, I need some help. And because I had picked somebody where it was just wrong. And he's like, what are you doing here? Why'd you come? And I said, I want to learn how to be a man. I don't know. I said, this is what I'm just coming out of. And that says more about me than her. You know, I wanted to blame her.
Sure.
But it was about me.
Yeah.
And he taught me a lot by watching him, because, you know, my upbringing, I became an observer. And so a lot of my skill is, I saw how he did it with me, suggestions. Now, I was at a place where, and it's always been an interest of mine, if he made any suggestion, I'd have the book read that night. I just wanted to. So, you know, my credentials really are my life, and then I've read so much stuff.
Yeah.
But any official degrees, none.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have your certified life coach.
Yeah.
And I don't ask that, you know, to find out if you've got a, you know, Harvard law degree.
Sure.
I ask that because I think it's really important for people to know that there is some richness behind, you know, the pretty face, right? There's an experience of life, and I sense that you have, you know, a great.
You can't teach my experience in a class.
No,
yeah, I mean, honestly.
Well, and so there's a lot of lessons that you learn from failure.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of lessons that you learn from success. What I like to do is I like to take people down the road of what are some of the struggles you had? What are some of the failures that you had? And how do you use those life lessons today in your work and in your business and in life?
What are some of my failures? Bankruptcy, 2 divorces, alcoholism, sex addiction, tobacco addiction, sugar addiction, spending addiction.
You're addicted.
So
any drug addiction?
Yeah, no, I didn't.
Alcohol?
No, my brother liked that stuff, and really, it wasn't so much my brother. I remember in high school, there was this guy I kind of grew up playing football with, and we're taking a bus ride home, and I looked over at him, and he's like this out the window, and I saw because I feel things. Yeah. I saw that pain, and I went,
not for you.
No,
not for
me.
me.
I was already in enough pain, but his was worse.
Yeah.
And so I just never, I went everything else.
Tell me a little bit about addiction, and I mean, go ahead and define it, and really what it does to people, what it causes people to do.
For me, it's an I believe addiction comes from overwhelming feelings that are unresolved, like me finding my mom. That's overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's beyond comprehension. And it shakes you to your core, and you're so young, and you have no coping skills. And so you're in so much pain, and we teach kids about the Spanish-American War, about how to drive a car. We don't teach them anything about how to handle their emotions or fear. What happens?
Right.
And that's part of why I do this is nobody knows. Nobody knows that I walk out here and I can show you how everyone's in fight, flight, or just freeze, walking down the street, and they have no clue. It's part of life.
Yeah, it's like automatic. Yeah. We're automatic pilot.
Trauma, I'm not unique. Everyone's been through it, but nobody talks about it because there's a taboo. You're somehow bad, yet we scream and yell at our politicians and everybody, tell us the truth, because if they do, then I can admit I'm just as, vulnerable and weak.
Yeah.
So at any rate, to me, that's what addiction is about. It's intolerable feelings. And so you're trying to feel good. And that's what I look at as the feeling of the pain is so great you can't even register it.
Yeah.
And there's just this hunger to feel better, and it's all short-sighted. So it's all in this moment, I need to feel better. Give me this, whatever that may be.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I've learned, and it wasn't until I hit my 40s.
Yeah.
I'm 47 now. So when I hit my 40s, I realized that at some point I actually have to feel these feelings. They're not happening to me.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's a concept, right? They're not
Feelings
happening
are a choice.
to me. They're happening out of choice, and I can choose to feel them or stuff them.
Yeah.
And there's going to be an impact either way. Yeah. Like we can feel them right now and let them go, or we can stuff them and
you're still feeling them, whether you're registering them. Because there's a lot of that. There are a lot of people that shut themselves down and are, what I would call emotionally anorexic.
Yeah.
And so they're not in touch with themselves.
Well, in the spiraling out of, spiraling, speak English, Michael, spiraling out of control comes from, I think, and you speak to this really, that you haven't developed the mechanisms or tools to deal with the feelings you're having. Exactly. It's overwhelm. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about how that impacts your coaching today, like all of that, bankruptcy and everything else. How does that impact your coaching today?
Well, empathy. Mm-hmm. I lack of judgment too. A lot of people, everyone wants to get better, but the stigma or that voice, fear usually is that negative voice saying, no, don't do it. You're okay. He's the problem, not you. She's the problem. You're fine. Just stay. No, don't deal with it. It's not that big a deal. All these voices to keep you back. But then you sit across from, someone like me or someone else who's done the work, and there's a sense of, well, his life was a train wreck, but he's okay. Well, okay. Then maybe, it's an invitation. And so now what I have to be careful when I'm working with someone, it's different. Depending on the environment I'm in. On a one-on-one, I'll share my experience only if it can help them, because otherwise I've seen this happen a lot. And actually when I was younger, I would do more of this. You'd hijack things by making it all about yourself.
Ooh, yeah.
So there's an art form in knowing when to share some of your stuff and when not to. And that, you kind of mentioned it earlier, of there's a feeling, and there's and I remember years ago helping people inside going, keep your mouth shut, and I couldn't. I had to tell them about me.
Yeah.
Now, was I helpful? Yes.
Yeah.
But could I have been more helpful? Now I can sit across from somebody and I'm going, this is going nowhere. And the old me wants to pop up and go, well, ask this to get it stirred up.
Yeah.
And now I can sit there and go, it's coming. Just let it come.
Right.
And all of a sudden, boom, it just happens.
I experienced that, in our sessions.
Yeah.
And that's why I said brilliant.
Thank
really,
you.
really good. Because I've been in situations where that's not the case with,
Sure.
with other coaches and whatnot.
Yeah.
This is probably the most important thing I think that I could ask anybody.
Sure.
And it relates to how success occurs to the businessman, right? So how does success occur to you?
It's funny you asked that. I wrote a story about this, and I also did a video version of it. And this is my experience. This is what I've come to learn about success. I was out for a bike ride, and pedal along. I get to a really busy intersection, and your feet clip in, right?
Right.
Well, I unhook my left foot and I'm leaning on it, and there are cars everywhere waiting for the light to change, and I'm not really paying attention. I remember turning here, and for whatever reason, I thought I'd lean on my right foot. So my right foot's clipped in. So I just right over. And I am splayed out on the concrete, right? Yeah. I'm literally an octopus in a tree, just flailing. And eventually I somehow get myself righted back up, situated, and a second or two later, the light changes. Well, as I'm pedaling through the light, I start to feel something. I'm like, what's going on? And as I get through the intersection, I go, oh my God. It never once crossed my mind to look and see who saw me, to try and pretend like there was something wrong with my bike, or to talk myself off the cliff like, hey, this happens to everybody. It never crossed my mind.
Wow.
And I went,
Wow.
in that moment, I went, that's success. To not judge yourself in a condemning way, that's it. And as I pedaled, I'm like, but as I kept going, I kind of lost the steam, and I'm like, what's going on? And I'm like, well, I didn't really get anywhere, so did I succeed? And I'm like, well, I know I didn't fail.
Yeah.
Because to not shame yourself, that's what we're all after. I mean, that's the essence of life, is to accept it on its own terms. I fell over, big deal. And to not even consider it as a problem.
Yeah.
That's true success. I was thinking, but I didn't arrive anywhere. So anyway, as often happens with me, I kept thinking about it, and eventually it disappeared. A couple weeks later, I was sitting on the couch and it just hit me. And I got up and I ran in onto my computer and I pulled up the definitions, and I'm like, failure, loser, inept. And I'm like, no, that's not it. And I look at success and it's like opulence, wealth, and I'm like,
wow. Yeah.
No. And for whatever reason, I just happened to scroll down a little bit further and I saw the Latin root. And the Latin root is succeedere. I don't know exactly how you say it. But the definition, it says to come close after. And I went, our definition of success is wrong. We think it's an arrival. But what did I do? All I did was come close after failing. I didn't arrive anywhere. I got better at something. And so to me, it means failure is success. You have to fall over on your bike.
Yeah.
Now, am I done? No, but it's just a process. So to me, that's what it is. So I have two challenges every day. What can I fail at? Because I'm just coming close after that, right?
Yeah.
And then what am I afraid of? Where in my life am I hiding something? Because I've recognized that my clients only get as healthy or as far or as successful as I'm willing to be. That's what I realized years ago when Mike, he would have me talk to some people. There was a piece of my life the sex addiction, I wasn't ready to let go. Well, when you're holding on to something like that, the people you work with are.
Yeah.
And so I've noticed it as I make jumps in my life, my clients will, boom, go through the roof. And so that to me is how I measure success, is where's my blind spot? And
that's powerful.
So that would be my definition.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I've heard it said so many times, and I love Zig Ziglar's version of it. He says, success is the progressive realization of a worthwhile dream or goal. I love that's the closest.
Progressive. I like that word.
Progressive realization. Yeah, it's not the realization; it's the progressive, and it's just like you said, succeed.
You never
Ray.
get there.
Yeah, it's to come close after.
Yeah,
that's a whole new dimension. That we can live into. All right, let's talk about your business.
Yeah,
let's talk about what it is you do as a coach.
Yeah,
and how you can help people, and really, your website and some of those other things that are available for people.
Yeah. Well, there are three things I enjoy doing. One is working with someone one-on-one. Two is more of a teaching aspect, which can come more in a speaking's the third, because I can impact a lot of people at once.
Yeah.
And also do teaching in that moment, because there's a separation. People will come to see you speak and they expect information. Someone sitting you one-on-one, they may not want, they will take him, sometimes. So they all touch different things. What kind of people do I work with? Divorce, trauma, addiction. What I found is I have yet to find a person who isn't afraid. I've never run across anybody that couldn't use my help, ever.
Yeah.
I see it all day, every day. What I recognize the most, though, is they don't know, because they don't recognize that. And that's why I can, bump into a networking thing or a dinner party, and someone asks a question, and I'll ask one question. You see them go white.
Yeah.
One of the questions I ask, I'll just say, I mean,
I've seen it happen.
This is the easiest way to do it, is think about the worst day of your life. Smell it, taste it, hear it, and now, most of all, where do you feel it in your body? And I've had people literally break down in tears right in front of me. That's affecting you each and every day, just walking out of the house. Not to mention, when you get into any level of stress, you're dropping right down to 1, 2, 5, 7, 8, 10 years old, whatever it was, when that's usually where it happened. That issue happened. And if you're not facing that, then you're sabotaging inadvertently. It's not conscious. Your ability, relationally, professionally, financially, every area of your life. And so
it's all impacted
everywhere.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, so is there a specific client? I work with athletes too, but do I, the typical athlete stuff is, where I go is different. It gets to the source.
Yeah.
And you clean that up, use things like tapping. And I know you're familiar with tapping and stuff like that, to break the physical, emotional connection. That's a huge resource. Mirror work, stuff like that. So there are quite a few different things I've learned over the years that really help people. But as far as certain types of clients, honestly, I've yet to meet somebody who could not benefit.
And you're located in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah.
And
Tempe base. It's
Tempe.
right on the corner. Yeah.
Right. Thing. And you've got an office in Phoenix, Tempe. And so if people wanted to seek you out, search you out, how could they do that?
Yeah. The website, www.coachingtoclarity.org. I'm on LinkedIn as well. I have a YouTube channel. It's just under my name, Kenny Weiss. Obviously, you can Google me and videos and all that kind of stuff.
Great videos, by the way.
Thank you.
Really well done. I mean, Coaching to Clarity, I love the name.
Yeah.
And the reason I like the name is because, you could have coaching to excellence and coaching to this. But the truth is that when you get clear, I think that's where our power starts.
Yeah.
The moment you get clear on anything, you now have a space to move.
Yeah.
And that's powerful. So coachingtoclarity.org, and your email address is coachingtoclarity@yahoo.com. So if you're, if you're looking to improve, at every area of life, and you want to get that stuff out of your body, Kenny's the guy to talk to for all of that. And let's take a look at your website real quick. Can you pull that up? Great. And so we have coaching to clarity. Can you just walk us through? It should be
Sure. Yeah. I start front there. There's a couple different videos. One that's grayed out is from a speech I did, basically a condensed, edited version of a speech I did. Yeah. And the other one is just a quick intro that basically we're all coaches, every one of us. I mean, there can be a bit of a, you're a coach, and what do I need a coach to tell me how to live my life? And what that video basically says is we're all coaches. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Whether it's a mortgage, real estate, finances, whatever, I could care less about all those. So I go to a coach, a mortgage guy, who's going to coach me through the process because I don't want to spend the time to learn about it.
Right.
And he's going to make my life better, faster than if I spent the time. Well, that's all I do. I've spent the time learning about fear, human dynamics, trauma, addictions, divorce, all that stuff. So do you want to go spend the, almost 50 years of my life that I've lived it, and the 30 years I've been studying it, do you want to go do that to get to where I am today?
Yeah.
Or do you want the Cliff Notes version and go, look, which button do I put? It's like showing up to sign your home loan.
Right.
It's 600 pages. Do you want to learn about all those 600? Or just
here,
sign your name?
Here, sign here, sign there, yeah.
So, I mean, look at it that way. I'm your mortgage guy. Just come sign the papers. You get there a lot quicker.
I love it.
I mean, really, that's the honest truth, whether it's your business, your personal life, sports, whatever it is. I make your life better, faster.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
And there are some success stories that you like.
Sure.
Some of the people
There's a couple
that are up there, and I highly recommend read them because they're fantastic. Yeah. And the success story could be your story, like really could be your story. When you and I got together and we talked about several different things, it wasn't just one thing. And I think that in that conversation, which was really great, I like conversations. Yeah. But in that conversation, I think that you keyed in on some things that for me personally really woke me up.
Like what?
Well, the first thing I think was the fact that I have this push-pull kind of personality where I love to dive into things, but then I'll pull back out. Yeah. And I noticed that in my life in a lot of areas, especially relationships. And my current relationship is at the effect. Shall we say it that way? At the effect. But that clarity, I actually had a conversation with my girlfriend about it.
Did you after that?
And she said, "Oh, I see that, honey. It's okay." Yeah. And I said, "No, I want to transform that." And so we began to talk about that. Thank you, by the way.
You're welcome.
I think a lot of relationships are like that. And I don't know that I'm unique, right? I don't think I am.
No. Yeah. No, we've none of us know how to have a healthy relationship. Sadly, every relationship you've ever seen modeled on TV, in a movie, everyone thinks that's love. I want that feeling. Well, that's codependence and love addiction and love avoidance. That's pure toxicity.
Yeah.
And we've never seen a true healthy relationship modeled. So why would we know one? And so why are we in divorce and all that stuff? And so that's part of what I teach people. It's what I had to learn.
And you went through a divorce, right? And so I did too.
Yeah.
And I got at the end of my divorce, I said, I'll never do that again. And I didn't mean not divorce. I meant not get married and then divorced. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I hold true to that today, but I think that I'm striving towards that healthy relationship. And your coaching has helped a lot. And we're going to have a few more sessions. So this is probably one of the areas of life, especially when we're talking about business, that gets impacted. And relationships are impacted by the way our businesses are going, and our businesses are going the way they're going based on the way that our relationships are impacting. It just begins to permeate.
Yeah.
Right. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing I've noticed is learned helplessness, which is basically learned failure. When you come up, we've all been through some sort of trauma. It's given. Even I sat with someone who said, well, I had a perfect childhood. I asked him one question. He just kind of, I argue, other than I argue with my mom. See, the thing is, people try and grade trauma. His arguing with his mom is equally devastating to him as my finding my mom. That's what people want to grade and go, well, it's not that bad. The problem is it's my experience. And if all my experience is arguing, that's death. it's impacting him. Just his eyes, everything, his body position, his tone, everything changed. That's why I say there's so much where I don't hear words. I see everything. I saw how much pain he's in just from arguing with his mother.
Wow.
And so that's permeating. He's a finance guy. He can't close deals because when he starts to feel a bit of resistance, he goes subconsciously right back to his mom.
Wow.
Now, that's what I mean. People don't realize how this impacts them. Oh, yeah, it was just this bunch of hooey. Well, I sit across right there. I see, he just tells me, yeah, I argue with the mom, go down. I go, okay, this is what's going on. This is what he's struggling. I'll ask one more question. He's like, yeah, I am having a problem with that. Well, how did I know? That's part of my gift. And so then I can walk him through, and all of a sudden he's like, there was a different financial advisor, same thing. He had a belief that you could never get somebody to give you, sign a deal and trust you with their money in the first appointment, that it had to take 3. He'd never had one. Well, I asked him a couple questions, walked him through it. I got a call 3 days later. He said, I've had 2 first-time appointments since we met. One lady gave me $56,000. The gentleman gave me $200,000. He had set up a dynamic in his head based on something he heard when he was younger.
Wow.
Just a message that he got heard younger that said, I can't do this. Now, was he aware? No, nobody's aware of this stuff.
Wow.
That's why I say there isn't anybody I can't help, because most people lack awareness, not because of they're inadequate. Nobody's helped them. No one's taught it. It's just, what do we focus on? Reality TV. The reason we like reality TV is simple. We get to look at somebody's life that's a bigger train wreck than ours. So we can sit in ours and go, oh, thank God I'm not like her. It's true. That's why we love it.
That's funny.
And the sad part is people want to be on reality TV. They think it's good. The reality is you get picked because you are a train wreck. But it's acceptable. I'm not trying to condemn train wrecks, because we all are.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is that it's a passport to denial, and the more you deny, you develop learned helplessness, which gets you in that place where you see on reality TV, what can I do? It's not my fault. There's nothing I can do. My life just sucks. I have to accept it.
Yeah.
That's learned helplessness, and that's what I see pervading our society of poor me.
Is that synonymous with victimhood?
You betcha. Yeah, it's all.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's really what people get to expect when they work with you is the gift that you have, the gift that you are, right? The gift that you have and the gift you are, and just the ability to get right to it. Like that's the thing.
If they want to.
Yeah, if they want to, sure. Because some people might not want to, because it's scary.
No, there's some I don't. I literally, because I can see it. I'm like, it would not be beneficial for me to ask this question right now. So I don't. It may take 2 months before I, that's the thing is, I don't have like you for this. I don't have a formula. I will know, if I will break this person in a way that's harmful. I'm not going to do that. So then it's a slow, I allow them denial and their, coping skills, and it's a slow chinking of it until they're ready, and usually they ask for it. Yeah. Someone who's in that place, they'll come to me and go, look, I've noticed X, and I'm like, huge smile, tell me more. and everything, and then their life like that just blossoms.
I'm going to ask this question.
Sure.
I think I know the answer to it, but it's almost obvious. What matters most to you in your contribution here?
That. I mean, there's a piece that's selfish. I recognize. I mean, I've done enough work to recognize that part of what I do is about me. That this is my chance to stop beating up on myself. I'm walking in my gift. I get to like me now. Where I spent 50 years not liking me, choosing a life to inflict pain on me. So some of this is about me, and that's okay.
Right.
I'm at a place where it's okay. That's wonderful. But that's the gift I get to give. See, I can't give that to somebody. If you don't model it, people learn by watching. So if I can't walk in that, or as a coach or a therapist, whatever it is, if you don't have that inside, how can somebody else get it? And so that's what it is what I learned is I really destroyed myself enough that I was almost out of pain. basically is what happened. I'm out of pain. And so I was left with a choice, kill myself or choose what would happen. You asked me earlier questions. This is what happened in that moment. I said, what would happen if I turned towards what I've always been afraid of, which is I don't know what will happen. Mm-hmm. See, growing up with an alcoholic mother, that's why I said my gift is part of my upbringing is I anticipated things. I learned to look for signs and keys, and that's why I see certain things with people.
Right.
So I spent a life in hypervigilance, but it was killing me. And so I had to let go and go, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and have no clue what to do. And I did. I woke up the next day. I walked out of my bedroom and I just sat there and I stood there and I just started crying. I'm like, what do I do? If I'm going to do this, what do I do? And I didn't know. And so I went, go sit on the couch. So I did. And I just kept crying. Eventually I went for a walk and I'm like, God, it's beautiful and it's peaceful. I'm crying. Why am I crying? And from that point on, I just started walking in me and my instinct. And really it's that peace. And so what's the gift for people? It's that I can let them be where they are and find this just like I found it.
That's awesome.
So
what a contribution you are. I mean,
thank you.
Really, and I've met, I've been in the room with quite a few people that have all said, thank you.
Yeah.
And those are authentic thank yous.
Yeah.
And you've worked with people of all walks of life. And what is your vision for the future? I mean, if you were to take what you have right now, and obviously you're leading a charge, because I mean, you have a unique, I guess, I wouldn't want to call it an angle, but you definitely have a unique way of approaching, healthiness. Let me ask this question before I get to that one.
Sure.
Because we talked about asking questions, right? And asking better questions. And that's something that you do.
Yeah.
So explain it, first of all.
Sure.
Like, what is it that you say?
I say change your questions and you change your life. Mm-hmm. And the reason is I realized the questions when I was stuck in fear were, oh my God, what am I going to do now? Oh no, I failed again. Geez, what? Every single thought and question is either directly negative or it's rhetorically negative. Mm-hmm. And so our thoughts are almost always questions or rhetorical negative statement type questions, right?
Yeah.
Have you noticed when you're down, that's kind of what you do.
Right.
Oh, geez, can you believe what she did? And it's this, can you believe what she did? Wow. What can I learn from that? Where's the gift in this? What if I took this and flipped it? What am I missing? You see what I mean?
Interesting.
That's the thing is everyone goes this route. It's a victim, poor me, and I did it. That's why I know it. I'm not judging them. I'm pointing the finger at me as I say that. Yeah. And what I learned to do was every single thing is a gift. Everything. So if something so-called bad happens, as far as I'm concerned, it's like, oh, what am I missing? There's a gift in this. How am I pay attention, turn around, look differently, take the question, take the situation, ask it 10 different ways, and eventually it'll click and you go, oh my God, I can do this now. But when you're stuck over here, you don't see it. So that's why the change your questions is it completely changes you from the inside.
I think it gives you access. The questions that you ask give you access to something.
Your soul.
And yeah, for sure. If you're asking the wrong questions, you're getting access to actions that will not, or inaction. That will take you down the road you don't want to go down. What's wrong with me? Why do I always do this? Etc. Instead of, you know what? That didn't go well. What would make a difference if I did something different? Right? Those kind of questions really make a difference and give you access to your genius, your brilliance.
And to me, if you want to make it really powerful, get in front of a mirror.
Ooh.
And go and try and keep your eyes. First of all, people are, I'm not going to do that. Well, that just lets me know how entrenched you are in wanting to keep your life where it is. Yeah. But the reality is that just shows how much pain you're in.
Yeah.
That just like I was, you don't want to face it. There's a voice saying I should, but you're scared of it.
Yeah.
You don't recognize yet that freedom's on the other side. But you get in front of a mirror and you go, what am I getting out of this victimhood? Nothing. And then do it a couple times. The next thing you know, when we think, and we've been in learned helplessness, that's all we think. You get in front of a mirror, you'll stop. I had the craziest experience when I started. I had to learn to love myself. And I'd sit there and I'd look in the mirror and I'd go, I love you, Kenny. There was a period of time where I could only hear my mom's voice. I went, oh my God, I'm saying it. And I can't hear me. And what I realized was this: no wonder I've been through 2 divorces. Because whenever someone said they loved me, I heard my mom. I couldn't trust my mom saying it because of my mom's drinking. She'd tell me she loved me, and then she'd go drink. So by saying it in front of the mirror, I love you, I went, it freaked me out. I mean, I broke down crying. I went, oh my God. Changed my life, though, because then I learned to be able to say it and go, no, that's me. And that's part of it. So I know people think the whole mirror thing is crazy.
No,
but
you got to try it.
Yeah.
You just got to try it.
It changes your life.
It does. It changes your life, and you begin to shed the conversations from the past that maybe you used to say, I love you, but you said it to someone else. Have you ever said it to yourself?
Yeah.
To yourself,
and just try it, and you're gonna literally I call it the Grand Canyon experience. There's a story on my website about that too. I'm just going to leave that. Go to the website,
check it out,
look out the Grand Canyon experience, and it'll describe what I mean.
Let me take you into our final segment, and that is, what is your vision for the future with your coaching, and how are you leading the way in this industry?
2 things. I would really love to see emotions being dealt with, just like math and
science. Like in school? Yeah.
School.
Okay.
I think there needs to be some sort of curriculum or something there. I know there's some challenges around that because who gets to decide how to define what an emotion is and all that. But I know there's a solution there. Change the question. There's a way to find a solution there. The other thing is, I want to fundamentally transform kind of the self-help thing. Most of what I know is out there. Honestly, there isn't much. What's unique is my life experience and my ability to read and see people's pain and understand when they need to hear and how they need to hear it. That's my gift. But the actual information is nothing new. All of these things have been around for years. Hundreds of years in some cases, and Tony Robbins, you can rattle them all up. Zig Ziglar, whatever, all the great people, everyone's recycling it, putting a new name on it.
Sure.
And a lot of my stuff is that too, I'll be honest. But I know there's a piece of me that is like, there is something new here. And there are times I get glimpses of it and it's not there yet. And that's the other piece is I keep challenging myself I know there's a solution here to something that hasn't been approached yet that could really help. And so that's the vision, is those 2 things, is to keep changing the question and going, what are you missing in this approach? These approaches help, but there has to be another better one. What's the next better one? Because that's what we've all done. And so I feel like there's one out there. I feel like I have a sense. I wonder where it'll take me. It'll come when I'm supposed to find it. I'll find it. So those 2 things.
That's fantastic. You have a unique approach, right? And I would say that like you said, the data's it's out there.
Yeah.
But when we start to talk about being an industry leader or being someone who moves like the conversation along. That's when it becomes next level.
Yeah.
Right? Like the next level stuff.
Yeah.
And I just applaud you for being that guy.
Thank you.
Like out there wanting to move it forward. And I agree. Sadly, look, we're not teaching it in homes. We're not teaching emotional, clarity at home. Yeah. And we're not teaching it at school, but it's got to be taught. Otherwise, we're at the effect of it.
What I like to say is this. How would my parents know any different? What did their parents teach them?
Yeah.
How would I know any different? How would anyone who's struggling, because there's such a shame-based, you're going to get help. Well, who taught you? Basically, if Because what happens when you suffer trauma, you get stuck there emotionally. And so when you raise your kids, you're basically a 10-year-old raising 2-year-olds.
Yeah.
You're not
doing, quote unquote, doing the best you can.
Exactly.
Right.
So I recognize that. So there's no shame for me, but that's what most people don't recognize. They don't know that, well, I'm struggling with my kids because basically whenever they're around, I'm effectively 6, 8, 10 years old too. No wonder we can't get along and we can't reconcile this. And so that's the reality of the situation is parents just don't know because no one's taught them.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, okay, let's say you need to replace the engine on your car and you've never you know nothing about a car. Here, go do it. That's what we're saying. And so you're going to judge this person because they're a bad parent? Well, they've never changed the engine in a car. How the heck are they going to do it? So, you know, that's how I look at it.
Parenting is a big, big deal. And I think, you know, I think a lot of people are ill prepared or equipped. Even.
We're handing a 6-year-old the keys to a Ferrari and saying, figure it out. And don't you dare dent it. It's the truth.
And you can't even see over the dash.
Literally, you can't see over the dash. And it's like, don't you dare screw this up.
Right.
This car is important. It's worth a lot of money. Our lives are at stake. Don't you mess it up.
Yeah.
And we give you nothing. Well, no wonder they struggle.
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate you being on the Business Edge
for
today.
having me.
And this has been a lively discussion. I'm looking forward to the next one and the next one and the next one. And by the way, if you need to get a hold, I don't say it like you need to get a hold of Kenny Weiss. Let me rephrase that, please. Look, if what you heard today lands for you, I highly recommend Kenny Weiss. I do, because he's not a therapist. He'll coach you to clarity. And what that really looks like is where you have this aha moment of something was in the blind spot in your life, and then you get to shine the light on that blind spot, and then you become aware of it, and now you can do something with it. coachingtoclarity.org is his website. Check it out. He's all over YouTube as Kenny Weiss, and then you can also email him at coachingtoclarity@yahoo.com. Give him a call or email him, and certainly ask him some questions, and he'll probably find some better questions for you to ask. So thanks again, Kenny.
Thanks for having me.
It was a pleasure having you here today. And for the Business Edge, I'm Mike G. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Business Edge. For more information on how you can be a guest, visit businessedge.com. That's BIZNESS edge.com.